Okay, so now we're on part 2 of our video series, Property Management 101, the basics. Our pillar number 2 that we talk about in our company is related to your pocketbook. As a property manager, as a landlord, it's going to be really important that you manage your finances so that you can optimize your rental property and profit the most that you can. So today I want to talk about 4 different areas related to your pocketbook or your finances when it comes to managing your rental property. My name's Richey. I am a real estate broker and I am an owner of a property management company in the Northern Virginia area. And this is an area we focus on heavily for our owners. There is no owner that isn't concerned about finances and isn't concerned about every penny that comes in, wanting to maximize that, wanting to minimize expenses. And so that's a big focus for our team, for our leasing agents, and for our property managers. So if you want to learn more about some of the things that you can do to really effectively manage your property and your finances, then stay right here. Okay, so the first area is related to income. Now, income is pretty obvious, right? There's a couple areas related to income that you want to think about. The first being rent. That's pretty obvious. That's your biggest source of income when it comes to your rental. The second is other ancillary fees. And so we'll talk about each of those. But first, let's just talk about rent. Everybody wants to get the most rent that they can get, right? But it doesn't do you any good to overprice your rental. And a lot of times, if you're doing this yourself, you may not be aware of market conditions. You might not be aware of what's some really good comparable rentals are in your particular area. So it may be really worth it to seek the advice and help of a realtor or property manager, somebody who really knows the market, can give you much more data that you can make an educated decision. And oftentimes, and most of the time, realtors, property managers, we can market your property to a much broader audience than you could on a variety of different sites and through our multiple listing service. And that brings in more tenants, more potential, more interest, and ultimately should get you a higher price. The other thing that a professional can help you do is really know the market and make sure that you price it right. If you overprice it, it's going to sit there for a long time and just accumulate days on market, and you're probably going to end up getting less money than you would have in the first place. If you underprice it, you're just leaving money on the table, so that doesn't make sense either. So what you want is that sweet spot where you're pushing it, but you're still attracting enough people to hopefully even bid it up a little bit. So being able to maximize your rental income is being smart on how you price it, how you position it. And in the first video, we talked about the property itself. So getting it ready too. All of those things are going to help you get the most rent you can get. Okay, so let's talk about fees. That's kind of the second area where you can get some income for your property. Now, I'm not a big fan of fees. We're not a big fan in our company of fees just for the sake of having fees. No tenant wants to be nickeled and dimed for every single thing. And I know there are books out there and a lot of people talk about you can charge this and you can charge that. But really, I look at fees like that are reasonable to charge if it's going to cost you time and money as a landlord. So things like lease renewal fees, things like fees related to pets, things like, for example, a tenant loses a key and now you have to go meet them or go get a locksmith. You can charge something for that. Things that are going to really take your time. I mentioned pets, and that's a big one. There are a lot of fees around pets. There's pet rent. In some parts of the country, that's much more customary than others. There are additional pet cleaning fees and other charges around fees, additional deposits. That's all reasonable, and people who have pets are okay paying them. They're not going to live there without their pet. When you have a tenant that changes over and you have to rewrite a lease, like so you have roommates and one moves out and somebody else comes in, you've got to get a brand new lease. That takes work and time. That's reasonable. Charge a fee, a late fee. Those are reasonable. So there are a number of fees like that make sense to charge. If you check out this video here, I did a video about different kinds of lease clauses that you can include in your lease to make it really solid. Not necessarily all about fees, but other clauses that may be important to you as well. Okay, the second part related to your pocketbook is expenses. So you want to maximize your income, but you want to really minimize and manage your expenses. Now, as a rental property owner, you're going to have to spend money to maintain your property, to do repairs, to market the property or whatever. So you've got to set aside some money to budget for that. Okay, that's super important. So you don't get caught with, oh my gosh, I have this, and now I don't have any money. or you're relying solely on the rent every month, start to build a budget for yourself and a buffer so that you can manage those expenses and do proactive things to help your property and your tenant. So with expenses, you have repair and maintenance is probably the biggest expense with the property. The second thing being leasing fees or management fees. Okay, so let's talk about the repair and maintenance. Like I said, having a budget is key, but also knowing the age of your systems and knowing kind of what you can expect. So if you know that your furnace is on its last legs, or maybe you have a service contract, which we talked about before, that is serviced every 6 months, and they're telling you, hey, you know what, it's you need to plan, this might not last for more than a few years, then you know you've got a significant expense coming up. There are other things like that related to repair and maintenance. If you have the trusted advisors that I talked about in the property video, then you know that you can be sure that what you're paying for repairs is reasonable, that these people are honest, and that you can sort of budget. But really knowing the condition of your home is going to help you manage the expenses. Now, on the leasing and management side, yes, a leasing fee, a property management fee, yes, those are expenses. However, as I mentioned a little while ago, if you use a realtor to help you lease a property, there's a very good chance that you could get it leased much faster than if you did it yourself, and probably for a higher dollar than if you did it yourself. And that's because, again, we have the ability to market it broadly and quickly and do all the things that we know how to do to get a good renter fast. We'll also be able to get you a good tenant, which in the long run will save you money too. But the management fee, same thing. You've got to decide how much your time is worth. Do you have the time to take the calls at 11 o'clock at night when something breaks? Do you have the time to keep up with all of the laws and the things that you should keep up with to be a good landlord and to do things right and really protect yourself? So those are the questions you have to ask yourself. But so sometimes the things that look like expenses really are things you really need, and in the long run can really save you money. And remember, many of these expenses are tax deductible, and we'll talk about that too. The third area related to your finances is having a good system to track and manage all of these expenses, the inflows and the outflows in your real estate business, in your rental business. Really it can be a very simple system. We use one of the top property management softwares for our business, but we manage 650 residential properties. If you've got one or two, maybe a simple Excel spreadsheet is okay, but tracking all of that, when did the rents come in, and documenting everything along the way. If you ever need that information in court, if you ever need it for whatever, the better track of it you keep, the better off you're going to be. Obviously, at the end of the year too, from your tax standpoint, it's going to be critical to have good data and knowing what expenses you incurred that year, from updates to general repair and maintenance to leasing fees and all of that. Important just to keep and have a really good system. So I'm not a tax accountant, but area number 4 is related to tax deductions. In a rental property, there are a number of ways you can take advantage of tax deductions. If you do updates to the property, all of the costs associated with leasing and management and other costs. I did a video about that, and it's right here, related to different kinds of tax deductions with your rental property. That's huge. So again, some of these things that look like expenses, yes, you're paying for that, but at the end of the year, you get some tax benefits as well. So it doesn't actually cost you as much as it may seem. So those are kind of the 4 areas related to your finances. Those are, again, things that we focus very heavily on because we want to make our owners the most money that we can. We don't want to use the cheapest people we can. And that's one thing I would absolutely tell you. Look for vendors who give you value. Cheap isn't always going to be best. So that when it comes to expenses, you just kind of need to think about it, like whether it's your time, whether it's your money, whether it's the liability, just make sure you're using the right kinds of people who can really, in the end, save you money. So hopefully this video was helpful, and if you subscribe to our channel and if you hit that bell, you'll be notified every time we post a new video, and share this with people that you know that could benefit from this too. And stay tuned for our next series, number 3, where we talk about your liability. Take care. Thanks for watching.